I really should have made this video around the start of my channel, but I never got around to it. Today, I wanted to talk about my PC gaming rig, or more specifically, the case for it, which is the Fractal Design Node 202. The internals will probably see an upgrade this year, but before they do, I wanted to take a look and see how it had held up so far. I'm Jason, aka Maslin Monty, and this is my small form factor PC. Being primarily a console gamer, I wanted to go with a case that resembled the PS4 and Xbox One. That's how I landed on the Node 202 by Fractal Design. It's a little larger than either of the current consoles, but at least, in my mind, hit the perfect balance between fit and features. The black metal enclosure is pretty stealthy, with just a power button and Fractal Design logo in white. On the front, you have input for two USB 3.0 ports, as well as audio jacks. With ample cooling around the casing, the rear opens up to show enough space for a mini ITX motherboard and a full-size graphics card. And just 4 Phillips screws later, and you're in the case. I went with a Gigabyte Z170N Wi-Fi motherboard, a motherboard I picked for a few key features, including built-in Wi-Fi. Sadly, the Wi-Fi is complete garbage on this motherboard, even with the included antennas. But thankfully, the other reasons I bought it for, those being the M.2 slot and USB-C, work flawlessly. See, the case has two 2.5-inch drive bays, and that's it for storage. As you can see on my build, neither of these drives are occupied at the moment. This is for 2 reasons. 1, the case is tight on room. I'd most likely have to get custom-sized data cables in order to fit 2 extra drives, which leads me into point 2, and that is, I hate cable managing. So that's why I have a crucial M.2 SSD attached directly to the motherboard. At 275 gigs, it's not huge, but it stores what I need it to, and even if I need to offload data, I have an external hard drive that is partitioned to back up both my Mac and my PC. As for the USB-C port, I got that to future-proof. I'm ready for everything to move to USB-C, and when it does, I'll be ready. I've already got a Samsung T3 SSD that uses a USB-C interface, as well as the Switch and my MacBook. On the motherboard, I've got 16 gigs of 2133 MHz memory, as well as the i5 6600K, both of which can be overclocked, but in this case, like literally this PC case, I don't want to push them. Finally, rounding out everything is the GPU, which up until this point has been the GTX 1070, more specifically, Gigabyte's 1070 Mini. I say up until now because by the time this is posted, I won't have it anymore. See, I bought it in 2016, and because of the mining craze, it's worth more now than it was when I purchased it, but more on that in my last video. So, as it stands, I'm currently without a dedicated GPU until the next wave of cards. I plan on sticking with Nvidia, but will probably take a step down to a cheaper card when new ones are announced. I know it sounds silly to downgrade, but I'm about to be a dad, so I could use every penny. And as you'll see in a second, for what I use it for, it's plenty of performance. So, those are the guts of the build. Let's talk about the peripherals. The showstopper is the monitor, LG's 34UM95. At 34 inches, this ultra-wide 1440p monitor is amazing. I initially purchased this monitor back in 2014, and have loved every minute of owning it. The ultra-wide aspect ratio is amazing for productivity, and pretty engrossing for gaming. With a total of just under 5 million pixels, it provides a good detail bump from 1080p, without being as taxing on the graphics card as a full 4K monitor. The monitor can also act as a USB hub. Alongside the DisplayPort cable, a USB 3 cable connects the PC and the monitor to power the hub on the monitor. Off this hub, I have a USB bias light and an anchor hub that I can access without having to reach around the monitor. Attached are my Apple Magic Keyboard, Razer mouse, and controller of choice, which is the DualShock 4 at the moment. The monitor sits atop a Just Mobile stand, which allows me to tuck away the keyboard and mouse when they're not in use. Back to the PC. I constantly use both USB ports, one for flash drives to load and unload files, and the other for my Blue Yeti mic. The Blue Yeti is what I use to record audio for YouTube, which I record on my Mac. So, I keep it plugged in to where it's readily available to swap over. Plugged into the Yeti are my AKG earbuds, better known as the pair of earbuds that come with the Samsung Galaxy phones. So that's my setup. Let's talk about how it performs. The goal of my setup was primarily gaming, and more specifically, to play anything modern at around 60 frames per second. Second, for a media center, so I have a small couch in my office, and the monitor is big enough to double as a TV, so content consumption is also pretty huge. I found that I don't actually play too many games on this particular build. In the last year, I've only played Rocket League, PUBG, and A Hat in Time for any considerable amount of time. A Hat in Time is a relatively small indie game, so my rig tore through that without a hitch. In fact, my MacBook Pro handled it just fine, but Rocket League and PUBG are more interesting. Rocket League is a very well optimized game, and even at 1440p ultra-wide, with just about everything on and VSync off, my PC was maintaining just over 130 frames per second. Dropping to a lower resolution like 1080p would jump that number north of 180 frames per second. PUBG, which I don't play often, only when I hate myself, is much more demanding. At a full 1440p ultra-wide, with most settings on high, I was able to maintain about 40 frames in most situations, and over 50 for most of that time. Dropping settings helps, but with the game network lag, frame rate above 30 isn't going to make that big of a difference. So that's the limited gaming I do, but without a graphics card, it's even more limited. So what's my end game? Well, looking forward, if the rumors are to be believed, Nvidia should have new graphics cards by the summer. I'll most likely replace my outgoing 1070 with whatever the next generation's step down is. I know miners will scoop them up as soon as they're released, but I'm pretty good at getting my hands on these things. Like that time I got one of the 20th anniversary PlayStation 4s. On top of that, SSDs are getting cheap enough that I can justify getting one with some custom length cables so that I can fit it without too much cable management. Finally, the Apple keyboard is great, but I could easily sell it and get a decent mechanical keyboard for the money. Suggestions in the comments below, because that might happen sooner than later. Anyway, that's my small form factor PC. I'm really glad I went with the Node 202. It's not the smallest case on the market, but the build quality and the reserved design keep me loving it. But what do you think? Is there a better SFF case on the market, or am I crazy for selling my graphics card? Let me know in the comments below. Once again, I'm Jason, aka Maslin Monty. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.